Yasya.
Yasya.
Whose?
Whose?
Avatar.
Avatar.
Incarnation.
Incarnation.
Karmani.
Karmani.
Activities.
Activities.
Gayanti.
Gayanti.
Chant in glorification.
Chant in glorification.
He.
He.
Indeed.
Indeed.
Asmat Adaya.
Asmat Adaya.
Persons like us.
Persons like us.
Na.
Na.
Do not.
Do not.
Yam.
Yam.
Whom.
Whom.
Vidanti.
Vidanti.
No. Tatvina.
Tatvena.
Cent% as he is.
10% as he is.
Tasmai.
Tasmai.
Unto him.
Unto him.
Bhagavati.
Bhagavate.
Unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna.
Unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna.
Namaha.
Namaha.
Respectful obeisances.
Obeisances.
Translation. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose incarnations and activities are chanted by us for glorification, though he can hardly be fully known as he is. Purport by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. It is said that the transcendental name, form, quality, pastimes, paraphernalia, personality, etc. cannot possibly be perceived by the gross materialistic senses. But when the senses are purified by the process of hearing, chanting, remembering and worshipping the lotus feet of the holy deity, etc., the Lord reveals himself proportionately to the advancement of the quality of devotional service. Ye yatamam prapadyanti. One should not expect the Lord to be an order-supplying agent, who must be present before us as soon as we desire to see him. We must be ready to undergo the prescribed devotional duties, following the path shown by the predecessors in the disciplic succession from Brahma, Narada, and similar authorities. As the senses are progressively purified by bona fide devotional service, the Lord reveals his identity according to the spiritual advancement of the devotee. But one who is not in the line of devotional service can hardly perceive him, simply by calculations and philosophical speculations. Such a hard worker can present a jugglery of words before an audience, but can never know the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his personal feature. The Lord has clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita that one can know him only by devotional service. No one can know the Lord by any puffed-up material process of challenge, but the humble devotee can please the Lord by his earnest devotional activities. Thus the Lord reveals himself proportionately before the devotee. Lord Brahma therefore offers his respectful obeisances as a bona fide spiritual master and advises us to follow the process of Shravana and Kirtana. Simply by this process, or simply by hearing and chanting the glories of the activities of the Lord's incarnation, one can certainly see within himself the identity of the Lord. We have already discussed this subject in volume 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam in connection with this verse. Tatshradadana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya vasantyatmani chatmanam bhaktya shruta kritaya grihitaya. Srimad Bhagavatam 1-12. The conclusion is that one cannot know the Supreme Personality of Godhead fully by any method, but he can be seen and felt partially by the devotional service process of hearing, chanting, etc. Om Ajnana-timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Jakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Sayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Pada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishvabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evaja Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha-tarini. So, hello everyone. It seems like what I can see there's Dira Govinda, Bhakta Keith, Bhakta Ise, Narayan, Malini, Bhakta Dominic and Bhakta Gaetano, Daru, George, Veyanan, LG Stylo 4, I don't know who that is.
It's Kim.
Kim. Okay. Ananta
Yeah.
Shakti, Leah, Rukmini, Christine, Brielle, and Anne. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be with you on Sunday afternoon, and I hope what I share is going to be helpful, inspiring. So when I read Srimad Bhagavatam, I like to set the scene and like go back to when, what are we? Who are we hearing? Where was this spoken? And it's like 5,000 years ago, a forest called Naimisharanya, and 5,000 years ago there was no Facebook, no emails, no mobile phones, no way to get people together in a very short time. And at that time, from what I understand, in Naimisharanya, thousands of sages came. They came and they just knew it's time to go to Naimisharanya and we're going to have a big sacrifice. And why did they gather? They gathered because they noticed signs. They noticed signs that were cause of anxiety for them. They noticed the first symptoms of Kali Yuga. They noticed, there's some omens, there's some things happening which tell us it's time, it's Kali Yuga time. So they gathered and they did a big sacrifice, a long sacrifice, because they knew what was going to come. They knew what awaits human beings, living beings in Kali Yuga. So if that's 5,000 years ago, it could seem like a very long time, but if we look at it from a bigger perspective, from the perspective of, let's say, Lord Brahma, who created the universe, 5,000 years is a very short time. And we can look into the world, and when I look into the world, I think, wow, it's quite a terrible place, a heartbreaking place. And there's war, there's hunger, there's concentration camps, there's so much destruction, so much nature is being destroyed, there's drugs, there's so much sex abuse, there's so much pain, there's so much suffering. And it's said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's just the beginning. It's going to get worse. So I was contemplating about that. Like, what does time actually mean? And like the history, if I look at the history in Europe, Switzerland, Germany, it's not very long ago. At school I learned it's a long time ago. There was the Second World War, there was Hitler, there were concentration camps, millions of Jews were killed. And it's 70 years ago, and has my question is, has the consciousness really changed? And I'm not convinced that it has changed. Like a few years ago I was walking with my children, they were very small, and we came across a cow shed, a farm, and there were calves outside in plastic boxes. And so the girls, they wanted to say hello to the calves, and they asked, oh, where's their mummy? I said, oh, well, they're not allowed to be with their mummy. And we happened to see the farmer, and they asked, can we go and see the cows? And he said, yes, yes. And he took us into the cow shed, and all the mother cows, they were there. They were all tied to their place. They could just move their heads to eat. And as I entered into this cow shed, I was really shocked, or like woken up, because the energy in this cow shed, it reminded me of a long time ago, like 20 years ago, when I visited Großrosen, which used to be a concentration camp. And I visited this place, and it was like a museum, and they were giving guided tours, and I think like 1 million Jews were killed in this concentration camp. So the energy of this place was so intense. And when I went into this cow shed, I was reminded of, it was the same energy. Like the cows, they were looking at us with their big eyes, and there was this intense atmosphere. And the farmer, he started to introduce us to the cows. He had names for each of the cows, which could be nice, but in a sense it was also quite terrible. Like he really loves his cows, and at the same time he was telling us how much milk they are supposed to produce every day. And the girls asked, so why do the calves don't stay with their mom? And he said, well, you know, if I leave the calves with their mom for more than 2 hours, they get so attached that when I take the calf away, the mother stops producing milk, and then I have to slaughter her. So it's like the same attitude. The consciousness is the same as in concentration camps, and it's happening with animals, just close by. And then, also the history, we can go back a few hundred years to the Middle Ages. There was the pest, a big disease that many people died of. So we could say it's a long time ago, it's 400, 500 years ago, longer, I'm not quite sure. But the consciousness hasn't really changed. Like we can look at COVID-19, it's like a disease. And what's the consciousness of human beings? In the past months I learned so much, or I think I learned a lot about the consciousness of human beings. So it seems material consciousness is just material consciousness, and it doesn't change. And the sages in Naimisharanya, they knew. And why did they know? Because it seems like history, it repeats itself. We can look at our own life and we can see patterns and habits. They repeat themselves. And then we can look at our family history and we see the same patterns. I can see patterns that I have in my mother, in my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. And so we can look at nations, they repeat history, and it seems the whole universe repeats its history. There's the cycles, the 4 cycles, the different yugas, it's a repetition. And even the creation of the universe, it's a repetition. It happens again. It's created, it's maintained, and it's destroyed. So there's this repetition of history. So the sages, they knew about these patterns. They knew about material consciousness in the different yugas, and they knew it's Kali Yuga time, and it's a challenging time It's a challenging time as long as we're in material consciousness. So we hear, actually what we're hearing is Sutta Goswami responding to Sonaka Rishi's questions. And like the essence, or the sages led by Sonaka Rishi, and the essence of the question, as I understand it, is, what is going to make the hearts of people truly happy? What is going to make the hearts of people in Kali Yuga, of human beings in Kali Yuga, truly happy? That's what they want to know, and they don't want to know for themselves. My guess is they already know. They just relish hearing it again. And they're asking for our sake. They're asking so that we can hear the questions and that we can hear the responses. So we hear, at this point in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear how Narada Muni asked his father questions. He asked his father, who created you? Who gave you all the information that you could create this universe, that you could create me? What's behind you? And that reminded me of an experiment we did at school, at primary school. Our religious teacher, he asked us to close our eyes, and he said, okay, now imagine the world, and there are no human beings. And he went back into the story of creation as it's told in the Bible. So take away the human beings, now take away the animals, and then take away the plants, and take away the water, take away the planet, and at the end there's just God, and now take away God. It was quite a frightening exercise for me, because take away God and there was just nothing. I don't remember getting a response or a perspective, but it was really shaking for me to ask this question. Who created God? And not receiving a response or any indication where I could receive a response. So Brahma, Narada Muni, he's asking his father, who is behind you? Who created you? And Brahma's response, this is going back a few chapters, but Brahma's response in essence seems like, I'm simply an instrument for Mahavishnu's will. There's Mahavishnu created me, and I'm creating this universe meant that I follow his instructions. I actually did not, correct me if my understanding is wrong, but that's what I understand. The Brahma said, I actually did not know how to create this universe. I simply became an instrument for Mahavishnu. So I was listening to the class on Friday. I didn't hear yesterday's class, so I don't know what you spoke about. Yes, I know the verse you read, but not what you spoke about. But the class that, dear Govinda, that you led on Friday, I felt very inspired by that. And I was contemplating on how Prabhupada says we create artificial needs. And it's so true, we create so many artificial needs. And then we need to advertise for those artificial needs so that people buy those things that they think they need or told they need. And And also I appreciated the conversation that we actually do not have so much control. Like we spend so much energy trying to maintain this image. I spend a lot of energy trying to maintain the image that I am in control. I'm in control of my thoughts and my feelings and my life and the circumstances, and the reality is I'm not in control. There's only a tiny little control I have, actually a choice. And I was reminded of you also spoke about, you mentioned this girl who got it together. I don't remember, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples went to the beach and met this girl, and she looked like she had it together, and after a few sentences he realized no, she didn't have it together. And I was contemplating about that, and I got reminded of myself in 2006. I really had it together. I had a good life, I had a nice boyfriend, I had a good family, I had a good respectable job as a teacher, I earned my own money. I really had it together, and I took the Sattva seminars. And my life is still I still had all those things, but I realized that I was telling myself that I should be happy with all of this. I should just be happy and satisfied, and what more can I get from life? And taking the Sattva seminars led me to understand, to admit that I'm not happy, I'm not satisfied. In fact, I'm suicidal. I didn't want to live. That's good advertisement. So, yeah, I was reminded of that, and I'm really grateful that I got this realization, this understanding, that I got this this place or this setting where I could, or I felt safe enough to admit to myself that I am totally miserable in this life, even though I had all the things that people want. Because that led me to ask more urgently, or to ask with urgency, well, what is going to make me happy? What is going to make me truly happy? So it was really a crushing experience that led me to go deeper, to go and find what is actually the meaning of this life, of this world, of this creation. And then I thought, okay, now I got it together. I can go to God, and I can go to Jesus, and then I met Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam was like, for me, like a magnet. I felt very attracted to it. And at the same time, it's similar, like the Sattva seminar. It's for me, it's crushing to read Srimad Bhagavatam. It's really like destroying my ideas of a nice world. It's destroying my ideas of everything's good, everything's going to be, there's going to be peace. We just need to do a little more, I don't know what, draw a few more white doves, and then peace is going to be here. And Srimad Bhagavatam is just destroying all of that. It destroys my idea of nice leaders. Like, yeah, someone who leads a country is really a responsible person. Like, they really want the best for everything. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to have this role. So all my naivety is being destroyed by reading Srimad Bhagavatam. And I feel at the same time supported to really face the world, face reality more. And it is heartbreaking. For me, it's really heartbreaking to see the wars, to see the hungry children, and even to see how we quarrel in our family. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the Kali Yuga that even husband and wife fight. And it's true, and it's so painful. It's so painful. So, yeah, why not? Why not just want to numb the pain? I feel more compassion towards people who numb their pain with drugs, with sex, with whatever. It's because it is painful. And then there's this path we're following as following Srila Prabhupada. There's the 4 regulative principles. So even those even the doors that are there, like if we choose to really follow this path, and if we choose to accept those principles, then we close the doors to numbing. We close the door to numbing. So as I was meditating on that, and this all came to me, and with it like a deep appreciation for anyone who is courageous enough to come to the morning program and to read Srimad Bhagavatam. And it means like we're facing the world, and we're not that we're not running away anymore. I know I'm still running away whenever I can, but still I committed to a process that brings me back. And we can even do good things to numb the pain. We can do like very sattvic things, and it still can come from the place of numbing pain, numbing the reality that we're stuck, captured, prisoned in the material consciousness, and most of the time, at least for myself, separated from God consciousness, not in God consciousness. I can do so many good things. And you spoke about the 4 categories of learners, 4 classes of learners, like those who hear, no, those who need to actually do something, like steal something and go to prison in order to understand that stealing is perhaps not a good idea. And then there's those who can simply hear, oh, stealing is not a good idea, and they accept them. Yeah. So when you shared about that, I was thinking there's so much, even sattvic activities can be about numbing pain. They can be about running away. And you were speaking of clear intention, and we can have clear intention in the different modes. So having an intention to achieve a result, get more money or a nicer house, or it can come from a rajasic place, and it works, like forming an intention and working towards a goal. It really works. Of course, there are obstacles, and sometimes it doesn't work, and then we can learn from that. But I was quite. I was reminded of how I formed the clear intention to create a center for transformative communication, Sattvatov, personal growth, a center for conscious living, and that was like very soon after I took the seminars. And for 10 years I was meditating on this center. It became like I totally identified with this vision. And it's a beautiful vision. It's very sattvic. And it even happened, and really I wrote a pact in 2008, and my timeline was the center is here in 2015, and 2015 we came here to Rosenberg, and that's looked like the perfect solution. And some of you have visited here. It's a beautiful place. It's a heavenly place. So we came here, and I was so happy. I thought, wow, it's a proof that all the principles of transformative communication, all the principles of conscious living, they really work. We can apply them and they work. And so we were here happy, and after 1 year there was like a big bang, and the whole center, like the whole vision of this center, it just collapsed. Like the owners wanted the place back, and the managers left the place, and it's no longer a seminar place. It's just a different place. And for me, it was like everything that I had identified with the past 10 years was just gone, and I was left with the question: who am I? Who am I without the vision of living in a place for conscious living, running seminars, organizing seminars, homeschooling, having places for people to have time out and recharge their batteries. And I realized that it was actually Krishna who set me free. He set me free from a prison I had created a long time ago with my vision of a seminar place. And it was driven by wanting to live in a heavenly place, and not needing to face the world and just hide. So with our intentions, with our desires that we have, that are or meditations that are from the material consciousness, that's how we create our prisons, how we create our future prisons. And it's actually like a question I'm in every day, like who am I without this vision? And who am I without my ideas of who I should be, or what it should look like to live a God-conscious life, and to not get attached to new ideas what that should look like, and identify with them. And when this happened, it's now 3 years ago, when the whole vision just crushed. Looking back, I see that something in me had changed. Something in me had changed during that time, and that is that I got more serious about Krishna consciousness, about God consciousness. I read more in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and I formed a desire or an understanding that perhaps the safest way to not create a new prison is to put my intention and my meditation on to put my meditation on service, to focus on service. Like, how can I serve with more purity, with more strength, with more clarity, with more balance, with more groundedness, and still be creative and active and have visions, but not get attached to them. So why not have clear intention about devotional service or pure devotional service? Why not form an intention about that? It's like there are no obstacles, like to form an intention from your pure goodness. There's no reason for an obstacle. There's no impediment. So this, and it's all about unconditional love. It's it's so attractive. But apparently it's not so attractive. Otherwise we'd choose it. Yeah. So in Lord Jesus' teachings, the phrase that he uses most often is "do not fear." Do not fear. That's what he repeats again and again. Do not fear. And it seems we have so much fear. Like we have so much fear to let go of who we think we are or who we think we should be, because we don't know what's beyond. As long as we don't know what's beyond, we're just facing a vacuum, like a dark space of nothing. If I let go of my role, my idea as a mother or as a friend or as a wife or as a neighbor or as a teacher, and I don't have anything to identify with, it's really scary. Imagine going through a Sattva advanced course and there's no contract and no stretch. It's heartbreaking, it's terrible, it's painful. And so at this point in the Bhagavatam, in this verse, Brahma is, after explaining, he's going back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So like without knowing God, without knowing that beyond our false identifications there is a soul, there is an identity, a personality which is actually full of qualities. It's full of compassion, it's full of light, it's full of joy, it's full of wisdom, full of eternity. Yeah, then as long as we don't know that, it's scary to let go of false identities. And how do we really get to know about the soul or get to know about who is God? Yeah, we read Srimad Bhagavatam, the book that crushes all our illusions and can bring us to, or it has brought me to places of really desperation. It's also the book that gives us a picture of God. It talks to us about God. It talks to us about the soul and how we're eternally parts and parcels of Krishna, of God. That our essence is love, light, wisdom, eternity, joy, bliss. That it's in the same book. That's where we get all this understanding and knowledge. So how do we get attached to something? There's in the Bhagavad Gita is described like what we meditate on, that's what we get attached to. And it's described in the material context, like we meditate. If we meditate on something, like we see a nice car and we think, oh, if I had this car, we start to meditate on that car. And then we get the car, and then at one point the car gets damaged and we're frustrated and we're angry and we fall into illusion. We fall into illusion. That's like the last step, I think. And when we turn, so we can apply the same thing, and instead of attaching it to something material, we attach it to something that's eternal. For example, God, Krishna. So we meditate by meditating on Krishna, wanting to understand him. We get attached to him, and instead of falling into illusion, we fall out of illusion. We're pulled out of illusion. So, I don't know what's the time. Yeah, so at this point in this conversation between Narada Muni and Brahma, Brahma offers his respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And for me, turning to God is, as I shared before, it's about also becoming aware. For me, that's such an important aspect or line, I don't know, a track, an important track of Bhakti Yoga is that we are aware of our experience and that we experience our experience, that we experience our thoughts, we experience our feelings, we experience our sensations, because there is so much pain, and with that pain we can turn to God. With that pain we can chant, we can offer our broken heart to God, and by doing that with sincerity, with like heartfelt emotion, God is going to respond very quickly. And the question, who is He and what pleases Him? Yeah, how do we learn? Like we've spent so much time, hundreds, thousands of lifetimes away from God. How can we know Him? How can we get to know Him? And we can get to know Him by hearing from those who know Him, by hearing from those who met God, who see God, who hear God, who serve God. And we learn from them by serving them, by asking, well, what pleases them. And an example came to my mind. There's a prayer of peace which is said that St. Francis prayed it. And St. Francis, from my point of view, understands God well. He knows God well. And I like peace, creating peace on earth. That's been a theme for me for all my life. And actually, his prayer, he opened my eyes to a different understanding of peace. In his peace, in this prayer, he prays, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy." And it goes on like this, but the first line is, "Make me an instrument of your peace." Like Brahma prayed to Vishnu, "Make me an instrument of your creation." And St. Francis is praying, "Make me an instrument of your peace." And then I read a book by a Franciscan priest, and he explained, he wrote like a purport to this prayer. And one chapter is about, what does it mean, your peace? So St. Francis is praying to Jesus, "Make me an instrument of your peace." And he's explaining how God's peace is not a peace that is created in material circumstances. It's when he prays for peace, for God's peace, he speaks about peace of heart. A peace that we can create in our heart no matter what the external circumstances are. And there's many examples of, I was speaking about the concentration camps, and there's a book by a lady who was in a concentration camp, Etihi Lesi, that's her name, and she was in bliss every day, in conversation with God. She had peace of heart, and she was in a concentration camp. And so that, like by hearing from St. Francis and this monk who studied St. Francis, I got to understand more about God's peace. What is the actual meaning of peace? We can also learn from Jesus Christ. He had peace of God. That's my understanding. Even when he was on the cross, he was crucified. His heart was peaceful until one moment. There's one moment where it's described that he cried in pain, and he cried to God, and he said, "Why have you left me?" I don't know the exact words, but something like, "Why have you left me?" And it's not that. My understanding now is that, yeah, he was crying out of pain of separation. He was feeling separation from God. He was not like feeling pain of being crucified. Not the pain of he wasn't crying because of the pain of the body. He was crying because he was feeling intense separation from God. And we can learn from the songs of the Vaishnavas. I'm getting introduced to the songs of the Vaishnavas by Malini and sometimes Narayan, and it's so it's like balsam for the broken heart to read those prayers. And they're considered Shastra, and Shastra, my understanding of Shastra is it's authentic, honest realization of God. That's Shastra, and the Vaishnavas, they're pure devotees of God. They know God well. They know Krishna well. Some of them even met those who met Krishna as Lord Chaitanya. So they know him well, and they sing their songs, and they pray their prayers, and we get to sing them, and we get to pray them, and we get to understand or see through their eyes. We get to feel through their hearts how the feelings they had, the thoughts they had towards Krishna. And of course, it takes there's a danger of a lot of the Vaishnavas, they sing from a place of authentic humility, and they feel really low. They feel really like lower than a worm in the stool. They're feeling really, and that's true for them. And I know that I can feel like that too, but it's not true humility. It's more like a glorification of my self-sabotage. And so, we want to be cautious to not imitate, but to truly hear and meditate on the consciousness that they're in, and try to understand and know that we're trying to understand. So here Brahma is calling to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's reminding, he's sharing with Narada Muni, he's sharing with us. Even if we don't know God well, even if we... in the previous verse, in the purport, it's about how Prabhupada speaks about scientists who think they know so much, but actually they hardly know anything compared to the whole cosmos. Or just comparing to Brahma, what Brahma knows, a scientist doesn't know very much, and I feel like even less than a scientist. And here Brahma is saying, or the message I get is, well, even if you don't, if you know a little bit about God, about Krishna, that's sufficient. And it's actually impossible to know everything about God, and it's not necessary to know everything about God. And there's one Vaishnava song that especially inspires me at this time, and it's from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from Sharanagati, and it's a song to the spiritual master. And I would like to read the translation of the first two lines. It says, Gurudev, with a drop of mercy, make this servant of yours humbler than a blade of grass. Give me the strength to bear all trials and troubles, and free me from all desire for honor. O Lord and Master, please invest me with the power to honor all living beings properly. Only then will I sing the holy name in great ecstasy, free of offenses. And for me, that came to me because that's where I'm at right now, seeing, well, I can study the Srimad Bhagavatam for many lifetimes, and still I will only get a little bit. And what the Vaishnavas seem to understand is like another secret, which is praying to the spiritual master, for guidance, praying for that he opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge, which means also compassion for the other living entities. And not just compassion for other living entities in order that I can feel good about myself, I did something towards peace in the world. No, but compassion because that's like a doorstep to the holy name, a doorway to the holy name. Like by honoring all living beings properly, we can sing the holy name of God with great ecstasy. Yeah, and just recently, like Dominic and Dear Govinda, you compiled this book, The Power of Bhakti, and we're doing a reading group here, and it's so amazing what happens in this reading group. And just recently, there are 7 participants in this group. Some of them just know about transformative communication, and they said, yeah, we'd like to understand more what's behind this, what's the philosophy behind, and there's something Bhakti Yoga that, it sounds very interesting, and we started the reading group, and there's all this sharing from your community over there in Florida, and there's talk of japa chanting and kirtan, and so some of the participants in this reading group, they just started to chant, and they're saying like and in the last meeting we had, someone shared, she said, I don't really know if my name for God is Krishna, or if I even think he's a personality. I'm just experimenting with this Maha Mantra Kirtan, and I get up early in the morning and I chant and I sing throughout the day, and when my kids fight I just remember this Maha Mantra, and it really works. It really works. And then someone else shared, this holy name, it's like the best therapist. It's better than a therapist. So I feel really I felt so inspired by that. So I'll read the verse again. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose incarnations and activities are chanted by us for glorification, though he can hardly be fully known as he is. So I'm eager to hear your comments, questions, additions, whatever, corrections. George?
Hare Krishna, Anandini. I feel very inspired by your class. What really stood out to me and I really connected with was the idea of how we fabricate our needs and the notion of fear. And both of these, for me, connect with the idea of the mind as far as being our greatest enemy or our best friend. This idea of fabricating needs. And personally, the only way I connect with the mind is as my greatest enemy consistently. I actually had some realization in the last 48 hours. Danielle and I watched a film that she saw for the first time. I had seen once before I came into Krishna consciousness, and the film is called Inception. And that word inception, it means the establishment or the starting point of an activity. And just the context of the film is corporate espionage, but the setting is a dream within a dream within a dream. And the goal is to implant an idea into someone in a way that they believe it is coming from them. It's like a internally generated concept or idea. And seeing this film again in light of Krishna consciousness, really, like I could really kind of connect the protagonist with being the mind, with being something external to me that is consistently providing me with ideas, providing me with these fabricated needs that I interpret as just kind of finding inspiration or genuinely believing that are mine. And so often I go into a lot of misery if I don't take the time to respond to this idea or to notice it and see it as external. It's very much a source of why I fear so much. Like you mentioned, Jesus says, "Do not fear." It's because I constantly have this voice in my head, this internal stream of consciousness, or that I can't trust. No matter what I'm faced with, I hear this. Oh, here's an idea. Or here's an activity, and it's like never being able to trust it is very scary for me. Which is why I appreciate very much Prabhupada, even in moments when I am feeling reluctant to read Srimad Bhagavatam, or my mind is so tormented that I cannot really swallow the philosophy and the concept. Even going to some of his smaller books, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, or Beyond Birth and Death, just reading his writing that is also external to me, just like I have some intellectual understanding, my mind is external to me. I'm having other notions being implanted in me, and through Prabhupada, that's the only kind of peace that I experience. In church, they always say this thing, like growing up, Irini Pasi, they say, Irini Pasi. It's always peace be with you, And I've always wondered, how do I get peace to be with me, And the only way I've connected with peace in light of all the fabricated needs, all the do-be haves that I choose to take on without questioning, without responding to them, is just through reading Prabhupada, even his smaller books. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. That's what I'm kind of connecting with in terms of the mind, fear, and fabricated needs. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, George. Yeah, I'm moved to hear your realization about how your mind feeds you with ideas all the time, and how fearful it is to realize, oh, well, I cannot really trust my mind. And I also hear like finding peace is to go to Srila Prabhupada's teachings, even if you don't feel like it. That's like that. In his teachings, you're finding peace.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Anandini.
Krishna love.
I was feeling like really seen and soothed, and when you were sharing how like reading the Bhagavatam for you is like rushing at times. That's my experience. Like most of the time, I just feel like rushed, and and in your sharing, I'm appreciating that I can see that the compassion and the crushing, the compassion of the sages, the compassion of Rama, Narada Muni, and Prabhupada in crushing that which is like what is crushing me, actually. Like in crushing those desperate attempts to suck some juice out of this material context, or to keep chewing the chewed, as Prabhupada says. Yeah, I see how important it is to for me to be kind of seeing both sides of it, like both the bitter part of the medicine and the divine like sweetness, as you were talking about, like, you know, the love, the relationship between us and God, and like how, you know, Brahma here, after talking so much about how inconceivable Krishna is, he's just saying like, let's just love Krishna, offer our respectful, loving obeisances unto him. And yeah, I'm appreciating your sharing in that balance, and how important it is for me to like keep my eyes on like both, or else it's just like terrifying, or without that crushing of my material conditioning and of all my concepts and attachments to like, this time it's going to be perfect, this time I'm going to get it to work out. Yeah, and I'll be lost still in my...
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it seems like this balance. Oftentimes, I find kirtan after a Bhagavatam class more sweet than before a Bhagavatam class. That comes to my mind when I hear you speaking about the balance.
Yeah, definitely. I resonate with that. And one thing that came to me that I was thinking about the other day is that for me, it almost feels like the contrast of like my alarm. Like, it's like there's like this like agitation that happens, like, and then there's a contrast to it. There's like the beauty and the love, and then there's like, look at the reality, like the intense violence and inescapable like cruelty of the material context. And it's almost like that contrast, like, in my experience, that's kind of like what's shaking me to endeavor to wake up.
I'm not hearing you. It looks like you're speaking, but I'm not hearing you.
I'm not speaking. I wanted to hear your response, but I want to say something different after.
Yeah, I was just contemplating, Narayan, what you said, these contrasts. There was a time in my spiritual or bhakti yoga path when these contrasts seemed like unable to bring them together. And that was a really painful time, feeling like facing the world and like immersing myself in a kirtan. It's like such a contrast that I couldn't bring together. And that came to my mind. It's not really a response. I'm happy to hear from you, Malini.
Hi Krishna, I feel inspired by your class, your sharing. And in your personal sharing, and also what I understand is that aspect of spiritual life kind of starts when we realize we are miserable. Like you said, you know, feels like you were happy, you had everything together, you were a good girl, like you were like a good citizen of Switzerland and like a nice life. And I was thinking, okay, well, that's a really important step to support people to understand that they are miserable. And I was just thinking of that, and I was thinking, okay, how can we support people to understand they are miserable while being compassionate for their misery, and at the same time knowing that when they discover that they are miserable is really progress. I was just thinking of that.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you sharing, and it reminds me that when after the seminars I had this LNP and coachings and I was speaking about obviously I feel, and I think at one point, Malini, you were very compassionate, but at one time, at one time you said, oh, you seeing that or understanding that you're miserable. It's actually like a moment of celebration. It's a good thing, and yeah, yeah, it's it's a good thing, even if it's painful. It's a good thing to realize my heart is broken.
In this regard, yes, Anandini? Oh, I'm sorry. Hare Krishna. Yes, I'm very moved by your presentation, the energy, and your coming from a deep, connected, realized place in yourself. And I had this certainly concept, but just the way you describe the regulative principles, the regulative principles, and kind of you sort of compare them to like the ground rules in the seminar. And in the seminar, we sometimes say overtly, these, especially in the advanced seminar, we'll sometimes say very clearly, like, we're taking away all of our escape hatches. And then just when you spoke, Anandini, I got an even clearer vision of that Krishna uses that term in Bhagavad Gita, the regulative principles of freedom. And I just, in hearing you talk about the regulative principles, is taking away our opportunities for numbing, to be raw in the sadness, to be raw in the pain, raw in the hurt, raw in the fear, and the insecurity, and the rage. And so that's Prabhupada and the Acharyas. It's like these regulative principles. It's just complete compassion to support us to not run away from our real life, and to run away from our real experience, and that full opportunity to turn to our real bliss, to turn to that surrender to the personality of Godhead. And that raw experience it's all designed for us to turn to our real happiness, and not the numb mask of looking good stuff. And so I just and then I'm looking at myself and my experience of like so many thousands of others, that because like there's like regulative principles in the overt way, gambling, meat eating, illicit sex, and then for each regulative principle we can think of subtle forms, like okay, like gambling. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to bet on the horse races or go to Las Vegas and bet on the roulette wheel. And then sometimes Prabhupada gives it much more subtle, broader gambling. And so every time surfing the internet for no service, for no true service purpose. It's an escape hatch. It's to numb the pain in my heart, the pain of trying to be happy in the material context. So I really appreciated that. I appreciate everything about your class, and there's one thing that you mentioned at the beginning when you were talking and about the Holocaust, the concentration camps, and you were walking with your daughters to a nearby farm, and with the energy you felt with the cows in their prison there, and so a story some of you may have heard me tell, but I was in my early years in Krishna consciousness in Israel. I was associating a lot with Danavir, who is now Danavir Maharaj. He's in Kansas City. Anyhow, before he came to Prabhupada's movement in the 1960s, he was actually a star athlete. He was the #1 volleyball player in the United States, and he was set to go to the regular Olympics, but then he met Prabhupada in Los Angeles, and that's what he did with his life, Krishna consciousness. But anyhow, he did go somewhere in maybe 69 or something. He did go to what's called he went to the Maccabiah Games, and it's Jewish Olympics. It's in Israel, and it's Olympics for Jewish athletes. So he went to that for volleyball, and he told me that kind of like as part of their experience there, maybe before the sports started, they did some tour. They did some tour of Israel, and one thing they did is they took the athletes to a slaughterhouse of cows and pigs and chickens, especially cows. And the reason they did that, because of course they also took them to like the Holocaust Memorial and things like that, but they took them to a slaughterhouse and they told them this is to give an idea of what it was like for the Jews, being slaughtered in the gas chambers of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and like that. And so that's impacted me, because I heard that story 35 years ago from Danavir. But just like you began your class with, it seems like the consciousness really hasn't changed, because in one sense, the guides of the tour, they had realization. This is what the Jews went through. They had realization, but somehow they're still putting the animals through it. And so it's practically inconceivable. I'm going to say it's practically insane. It is insane. But I just thought to share that because it came to me when you were sharing that piece. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what you say, and especially when you say the raw experience of fear, like the Vaishnavacharyas, that direct us there, support us there. It brings more meaning for me to the prayer of Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, paying obeisances to all the Vaishnavas, and the compassion they have for us, fallen conditioned souls. So, thank you.
Hi Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Thank you, Anandini, for your class. I really appreciated it, and I feel inspired. I wanted to just comment that I feel inspired how the power of bhakti is a preaching tool, and from what you shared, I'm really connecting to that. And I've heard other reading groups done and had similar results, and I just wanted to say that I appreciate Dear Govinda for thinking of the idea of putting that book together, or just creating that book to use. I feel like as time passes, I see more and more how powerful it really is. At first I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting how the world responds to this book, as Dominique and Diragobindo were beginning to work on it. So I wanted to comment on that. And then I was also appreciating, like, acknowledging, like, yeah, the purification process and how it increases the sensitivity of an individual. I mean, I can relate to that personally through the chanting process, and then really stretching myself more and more with the regulative principles. I started to become more sensitive to the activities of the four regulated principles, and I just really appreciating acknowledging, yeah, there's a material context in which we're in, and we really can't experience the full the full experience of the material context until we fully have gone through that purification process. So I'm like really appreciating, like, just that, and that's kind of in the forefront of my consciousness with this class, because it's, you know, when I talk to, you know, individuals that aren't connected to this philosophy, or, you know, and it seems so like, oh, you're restricting, like, these things that you really enjoy in your life. And this notion that these regulative principles are to free us from being numb. We've gone through this. I went through this numbing conditioning in my life, just growing up, and, you know, engaging in, you know, all sorts of activities that essentially kept me from really experiencing fully the material context. And yeah, so I'm like really just appreciating bringing that to light. Yeah, thank you for your class.
Thank you for sharing. And the power of the book, it's, I think, part of why it's so effective is that it looks very attractive with the, what I understand is a statue that you made. I get a lot of comments about the picture.
Hi, Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Rebecca.
I'm really appreciating your class as well, and I'm appreciating your energy and your mood, and I feel really inspired and more connected to myself. And so thank you for your sharing this morning. And there's quite a few things that I resonated with. One thing was you know, your vision of a Sattva Tov center, and how you're really identifying with that, and how that I have someone who's wanting my attention right now. Okay, he's being taken care of by his dad. Yeah, I'm having an experience. I've been having an experience really since reading Prabhupada's books, or really, I should say, really engaging with his books, that yeah, I've felt crushed my ideas of what I wanted or what I thought I wanted, and also really feeling like I understanding the heart, or just having the experience of heartbreak heartbreak. I feel like that's that really resonates with me in my experience, especially this past year. And I'm currently thinking about like dismantling my practice right now in Gainesville, which for some time I thought it was what I was supposed to do, you know, like it was my service, that I needed to have this building and I needed to have people who were, you know, I needed to have a front desk person, I needed to treat all these people, and that I needed to do that, and that was part of my destiny, I've just that whole vision has collapsed over the past year, and now I'm thinking about like how I'm going to use the pieces inside the space to I'm like, oh, I can use that phone that's in there so that we can have a landline so that I can so that I can like get rid of my cell phone or like turn it off during the day, so I'm not so attached to it, so I can focus more on Krishna consciousness. Like I'm just that I'm still identifying with it. I'm not as strongly identifying with this vision. It's collapsing. It's been collapsing, and so creating space for, and I like how you said to connect with your service. You know, I'm not sure exactly how you said it, but for me, what I heard was how it was relevant for me was, how can I serve Prabhupada and not maybe changing where I'm coming from, because where I was coming from was more so, you know, my vision, what am I, and I'm connecting with what is my service, and maybe that in that I'm from what my experience is and from what's happening, what's happening internally for me and externally, I'm experiencing that. I'm, at least right now, my service isn't to have a big healing practice. So that I'm experiencing a lot of humility and in that, and surrender. And it's really been connecting me, bringing me to a deeper place of trusting what Krishna and Prabhupada, like what my service is, what Krishna wants from me. And I also wanted to share one other thing, and that is that I just had this, you know, the past 3 months or 4 months, I should say, but really the first few months of it, I've been following a very kind of, for me, a very like austere way of eating. And in the first few months of doing that, it brought up so much anger, so much rage, and I continued following it, and I was able to connect with this deep rage inside of me and what I was so angry about. And it's really been transforming my life, my relationship with my husband, and if it wasn't for following that austerity, I don't know that I ever would have made contact with that deep pain inside of myself, that deep pain and rage. And I just wanted to share that too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I hear like you're in the process of looking at what you created, by the idea of who you should be or what you should be doing or what you thought was what your service, and that's falling apart. And it seems to me like you're very attentive and conscious in that process, and to not just like throw it away or just jump out of it, but by taking all that you created and attracted and like link it to your service, as you mentioned with the phone, like to link that with service to Prabhupada, to Krishna. And I appreciate your sharing about food, how your insights about what I understand is like there are certain kind of foods helped you numb your pain, your anger, and leaving that aside, it was purifying. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I appreciated being with you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Ki jai.
Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Jai.
Anandini.